when I was there, I'm trying to think. I might have served in one or two wards. Generally, it was they were small branches, and the church's pretty young. I'm thinking early 1950s was when the first member was in Panama. I think that's correct. I know, and it was probably even an American because again, there were a lot of Americans on the military bases down there. And one of the cool things, going back, we went out there's a temple there in Panama. In Trying to think, I forget the location of the temple, but there is a temple in Panama. We went back in 2008 for the dedication, and it was fun. They're just being able to meet a lot of the people. A lot of the people who live down there are American still, and they're not military. They love the people. So generally, as a missionary, you'll serve probably still in branches. There might be some wards that are popping up more. I know my first area, which was my first area was Loma Cova. I know I think 2 months ago, they just dedicated their chapel there, which is really cool because when I went, we met in somebody's house, and it was just made of basically brick, and we'd go down in the basement for primary. The kids would have to climb through this little slot in a window. Even the adult primary teacher would have to climb through this little window. And we held sacrament meeting. And the way the house was set up, we had basically sacrament meeting in two rooms. So there was the front room, and then people kind of overflowed into the back, but you could only see through a little doorway. And so you couldn't really see the speaker, you just kind of heard him. And that was kind of similar in a lot of places where we didn't really have a building to meet in. And so it's always nice when I hear people give a prayer here in Utah or the United States and just express gratitude for the building in which they are able to worship. And I wonder how many of those people actually know what they're saying, because it is a great blessing to have air conditioning and just be comfortable in a church building, as opposed to where I was in my first area. If it rained too hard, you couldn't have your meeting because you couldn't hear each other speak, and just, tracking in mud, or it was so humid that you couldn't even stand it. And so it's definitely a great blessing to have a building to be in.
So I believe the church in Panama is somewhere just around 30 years, 40 years old, I guess. There's one mission in the whole country. I believe that the church is kind of new in that area relative to like Guatemala. I think it's older. In Mexico, there's a little more presence. I think that part of the reason why it's a little newer is with the declaration to that all worthy male members could receive the priesthood. So I think there are a lot of blacks in Panama, and so that's part of why the church is kind of newer in that area. It's growing pretty fast, but definitely not like the strong point of Central America, you would say, in church. So lots of opportunities to meet people, and especially like of many different faiths. I think in early church proselyting, they were probably running more into Catholics because there weren't many other churches. But I think in Panama there are actually a wide variety of churches with evangelicals and Jehovah's Witness and Catholics. So you get to see lots of perspectives on Christianity and learn from them, and provide knowledge that we have in sharing the gospel. I think when I was there were about 7 zones. I would guess around 7 stakes, something like that. But it ranges mostly from the west coast with Costa Rica to just past the city in like Tocumen area, and like Brisa, Still Gulf, something like that. Because like on the east side, the church, there are members there, but there aren't missionaries serving there in the Darien area, because that's with the border with Colombia, and it's a little more dangerous. And with my experience, I'd say it was about half and half. I was with branches and wards. Some of the wards probably could have been branches, but I believe that kind of the policy with my mission president was to try to let the local leaders kind of take control and guide the church rather than having the members depend so much on the mission and the missionaries with branches and districts. But yeah, I was in a ward where we'd have like an attendance of around 80. I was in a branch with about 30 people, and like half of those were young men, and that was a fun one. So sometimes the missionaries had to step up and teach young men, and kind of, I mean, that's a key leader in that circumstance where most of the ward are young men. So wonderful opportunities to interact with the members and trying to help empower them and get the church progressing, kind of self-sufficient with the membership there. A lot of people say it's a beautiful temple, kind of in the jungle area. So you can see it when you're going in, when ships come in through the canal, in the Panama Canal, and you can see it kind of on the hillside there in the trees. When you get there, it's it contrasts a lot with the city. It's like really loud. There are lots of obnoxious school buses painted. They call them Diablo Rojos. And I would say like that's kind of the epitome of, I mean, that's the Panama city life, kind of busy, crazy, loud. But when you go to the temple area, it's super peaceful and contrasts quite amazingly, and you can feel the spirit. We've taken investigators to the temple grounds, and they could feel the spirit there, and that's actually one of the good missionary tools that we have in Panama, kind of showing people the temple, talking about it a little bit. So I got to visit it 5 or 6 times. It really depends on your areas where you're at. So when I was farther west in the interior, like you have less opportunities to go to the temple when you're there. But when you're in the city, I believe like the policy while I was a missionary was like every other transfer, the missionaries of a zone could go visit the temple if you're within a reasonable distance. I think a lot of it had to do with communicating with your mission president and getting that approved. But yeah, they encouraged us to visit the temple, and it was good. With so many visits, I got to know the ceremony in Spanish pretty good, and it was a good experience to visit the temple while in Panama.